Week one is now officially over after we saw that game last night. Florida State going down to Boston College. Just some thoughts on that one before we get into the top 25. Yeah, Florida State's not very good, and this one really surprised me. I just didn't see it coming. I thought Florida State was going to have a drop off this year. I knew they would not be as good as last season. Thought they would lose 3 or 4 games, but they're just bad, and they're bad at the line of scrimmage. I think that Jordan Travis really covered up some of the issues that they've had for a long time on the offensive line, and then the defensive line is just not as good as we thought it was. Perhaps Jared Verse and some of those guys they had last year just made everyone else look better. I don't know. But yeah, overall, Florida State, this is just a bad football team. Boston College, though, I think they have a chance to be pretty good. I like what they've got, especially in the run game with Castellanos and those running backs. I think the defense played really, really well against Florida State. So watch out for Boston College. They could be a sneaky good team. I don't think that Georgia Tech and Boston College are both going to be really good teams, though. I think Florida State is bad, or at least an average team. I don't think they're good, and I think that with 2 games, we pretty much know that. I guess we could be wrong. Maybe Boston College and Georgia Tech both go 9-3 or 10-2. I mean, crazier things have happened, but I just don't see that being the case. So let's get into the top 25 now. And, speaking of those games we were just talking about, last week I talked about, is Georgia Tech that good, or is Florida State just worse than we thought? Trying to figure out where to rank those teams. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I don't have Florida State or Georgia Tech ranked this week. I had Georgia Tech ranked last week because of that win, because I thought Florida State was a good football team, and now it turns out really they're not. So yeah, Georgia Tech didn't do anything wrong. They won their game this weekend, but if we're evaluating the teams, a close one over a bad Florida State team, I can't rank Georgia Tech. In fact, I think you'd have to rank Boston College ahead of Georgia Tech if you were going to rank either one of those teams. So if you're new here, if you didn't watch the videos early in the season, my top 25s are going to look kind of crazy because I'm only basing it off of what I have seen so far during the season. Not looking at preseason expectations, not looking at where we rank teams in the preseason, none of that. The only time where I'm going to look at how good I think the teams are is maybe if they just didn't play a good quality opponent, especially if they played like an FCS team. So there is a little bit of that, but we're mostly just like take the names off the jerseys, look at the teams, and base them on their performance, not resume. So that's another thing. Like, we can't rank teams based on resume because most teams don't have really any kind of resume. And then it doesn't matter if you beat an FCS team 100-0, you're not going to be ranked because you don't have a resume. I mean, you have to look at the performance of the teams. And so it's not going to be a great top 25. And I say that every year. No top 25 before week 4 or 5 is a good top 25 because there's really no real way to rank these teams when you've seen such a discrepancy in the schedules early in the season. So with that being said, let's jump right in. I will try not to ramble too long on these teams, and I'll go ahead and tell you right now. So this is not necessarily mean a prediction of the rest of the season. I still think Oregon is a really good team and probably going to be a top 5, definitely top 10 team. But I don't have Oregon ranked because they struggled to beat Idaho, and Idaho's an FCS team. So based off of that performance, I can't rank Oregon, despite the fact that I think that they're still going to be a really good team. We'll see if they bounce back, and they'll have a chance to jump back in the rankings next week, potentially. And that's another thing. We re-rank the teams every week. There's no moving up or down. We take the sample size that we have, the games that we have, and we evaluate from there and rank the teams. All right, so no Oregon. Don't freak out when you don't see them at the end of the video. I think it's probably the only team that's going to be missing that you would expect to see. I didn't rank Clemson. Really, that performance was not great against Georgia, especially in the second half. I still think they're probably a top 25 team. I'm trying not to overreact to that, but there were just better performances, and so there were teams that I felt like deserved to be in there based off of week 1. And that's another thing. People will say, well, you're overreacting to week 1. I'm reacting to the only thing that we have seen. That's all we have to react to. And so that's what the top 25 is about for me, at least early in the season. I think it'll look more like the regular top 25 later. But we start at number 25, Arkansas, and Auburn at 24. So they beat FCS teams. They really didn't, beat even good FCS teams. But when you're beating teams, I mean, Arkansas beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 70-0. Auburn beat Alabama A&M 73-3. And both of those teams agreed to shorten the clock. They had 10-minute quarters in the second half. That's how bad those games were. I think Auburn was up like 50-something to nothing, or 50-something to 3 at halftime. I think Arkansas was up 49-0 at halftime. So I'm going to give them credit for, going out there and taking care of business. If other teams get better wins, they could easily drop out of the top 25. But looking at all the teams and stacking everything up, those performances are good enough for me to put them in the top 25. And I've got Arizona State at number 23. How about their win over Wyoming? 48-7. They were only favored by, I think, 6.5 points in this game. That was a very impressive performance against a pretty good group of 5 team in Wyoming. I talked about Arizona State in the preseason, all offseason. I said this team is going to be better than you think. I said they would get to a bowl game. I'm not saying they're going to get to the Big 12 championship or anything, but this week 1 performance showed that maybe I was right. We'll see. Vanderbilt at number 22. Did not expect to be ranking Vanderbilt at any point this season, but they beat Virginia Tech, beat them in overtime, 34-27. And when we talk about preseason and all that, you do have to look at a little bit the opponents. So I have to look at Virginia Tech and say I think that that's a pretty good team. After we get a few more weeks in the season, we might look at Virginia Tech and say, oh, they're terrible. Or we might say, yeah, they are good. And so, again, it's very hard and not good to rank teams early in the season, but it's fun. And so Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia played great in that game, really brought a new element to this offense. I was shocked. I felt very confident that Virginia Tech was a better team. They were going to win this game, and Vandy proved me wrong. So hats off to the Commodores. They are ranked at number 22. Enjoy it while it lasts, because I doubt they're going to be ranked very long, but they are here now. Kansas at number 21. They had a dominant win over an FCS team, Linwood, 48-3, and so they make it in here at number 21. All right, 16 through 20, we got number 20, Kansas State. Kansas State over UT Martin, 41-6. Did what they needed to do. You got Louisville ahead of them. They beat Austin Peay 62-0, so they were very impressive against an FCS team. Iowa is kind of a weird one. I wasn't sure where to rank them. They won their game, so they won easily, 40-0. But I think it was, and I can't remember now. Was it 3-0 or I can't remember the score at halftime? But it was close at halftime, and then they kind of wore them down in the second half. So how do you look at that? Do you penalize them for the first half, or do you look at the overall game? I don't know. It's an FCS team, so really not going to read too much into that. We got them at 18. Texas A&M, I thought, performed really well against Notre Dame. Notre Dame looked really good. So I've got A&M still ranked at 17. If they play Notre Dame tight, that means there's not a big, huge gap between Notre Dame and Texas A&M. So I feel like they deserve to be ranked. Why should I penalize them for losing and reward a team that beat a bad opponent? I shouldn't put Auburn or Arkansas. I talked about how they won their FCS games. I shouldn't rank them ahead of Texas A&M because they played FCS teams when Texas A&M went out there and played pretty well against a really good Notre Dame team. Michigan at number 16. They beat Fresno State. That was kind of a weird game. Really don't know. I don't know what to think about Michigan right now. They won 30-10. That game was close, though. I believe it was a one-score game in the fourth quarter, if I remember correctly. Davis Warren at quarterback is just, he's no J.J. McCarthy. The offensive line, I think, is taking a step back. The defense, though, is still really, really good. And because of that defense, I still think Michigan's going to be a good team this year. But we'll see. Fresno State's on, they're a very good group of 5 team, by the way. So I want to see more out of Michigan. I want to see what they do against Texas this weekend. All right, number 15 is Tennessee. They won their game easily. I beat Chattanooga 69-3. LSU. All right, so another situation where you're not going to penalize the team for playing a good opponent. I thought USC and LSU were very, very even. I thought that whoever had the ball last was probably going to win that game, and that's really what it came down to. So to me, I said this yesterday, if those teams played 10 times, I think you'd see each team win 5 games. I think they're very, very even. So they should be ranked close together because they're very even teams. It's possible that USC is better and maybe even a top 5 team or top 10 team. We'll see. But this is about where I had the teams preseason, and they looked about how I expected them to look. Now, the defenses did look much better than I expected. But again, very even teams. I think you have to rank them together. So USC ahead of LSU, 13 and 14. Oklahoma at number 12. They beat Temple. The score was very impressive. If you look at this, at the scoreboard here, 51-3. If you watch the games, there were some, I have some questions about, the offensive line at times didn't look great in this game. Jackson Arnold, though, impressed me. Just some of the throws that he made and the way he was able to move in the pocket. I was really impressed with Jackson Arnold. I think he's going to be very, very good for Oklahoma. And then Utah at 11, they won their game against Southern Utah 49-0. Again, can't take much away from these FCS games. Next, we've got Missouri at number 10. Same story with them. They beat a bad opponent, 51-0. Oklahoma State, how about their win over South Dakota State? South Dakota State was a team that a lot of people expected to maybe win this game, maybe at least keep it close, and Oklahoma State really didn't. The game was never questioned. I mean, they were very impressive. They won 44-20. And so give them some credit. We got Ohio State at number 8. A little bit of a drop because of their struggle in the first half. I know they still won easily. The final score is 52-6. But I felt like the teams I have ranked ahead of them were a little bit more impressive in week 1. And again, this is the team that I picked to win the national championship. I still think they're a top 5 team. But based off of that performance, I don't think you can rank them ahead of Notre Dame or these other teams I have ahead of them. Notre Dame is at number 7. Very impressive win against Texas A&M. That defense is really, really good. The offense gave them enough. And Notre Dame's a very dangerous team. Ole Miss at number 6. They beat Furman 76-0. Did what they were expected to do. And again, I'm not really going to move them from where I expected them to be because it was an FCS opponent and we don't know a whole lot just yet. So my top 5 looks like this. Alabama at number 5. Very impressive against Western Kentucky. Not a bad group of 5 team. They go in there and they take care of business. 63-0 was the final score in this game. Impressed with the defense. Impressed with the freshman Ryan Williams at wide receiver. Jalen Milroe doing what he does. This is a very, very good team. Texas just ahead of them. Beating Colorado State 52-0. This score not quite as impressive as Alabama's score, but I thought they were actually a little bit more impressive. And they, Colorado State and Western Kentucky, both good group of 5 teams. So give some credit to Texas and Alabama. Very, very impressive in their games. Miami at number 3 after what they did to Florida. Talked about that one yesterday. This team looks legit, at least based off of one game. Now, they could struggle the next couple of weeks and drop way down in my rankings, but based off of week 1, I've got them at number 3. Penn State at number 2. Drew Aller at quarterback. It seems to have taken that next step. I think it's really more about the changes to the offense. They're opening it up, more aggressive, and we saw that. They really surprised me against West Virginia. Both Penn State and Miami were huge surprises. I thought both of those games were going to be close against West Virginia and Florida, but they were both very, very impressive in their wins. And remember, Penn State was a team I had number 1 at this point last year for a couple of weeks, I think. It obviously didn't play out that way, so will Penn State be able to keep it up? We'll see. Georgia, though, to me, is the best team in the country. Just watching them play, the defense is elite like it always is. Carson Beck is possibly the best quarterback in the country, and they did what Georgia does. They wore down Clemson. They won easily, and the Bulldogs come in at number 1. So that's my top 25. After week 1, again, expect changes, a lot of changes in these first few weeks as we learn more about these teams. By the time we get to October, I think we'll know a lot more and have a much more accurate top 25. But right now, that's how I'd rank the teams. Give me your predictions, or your rankings, I should say, down in the comments below. What do you like or dislike about my rankings? Let me know.